Okay, welcome to what I'm considering an unexpected live stream today, as most of mine are, seems to be. But I just got the official release notes for 10.7.5, so I thought I would go through these, and then immediately after I'm done with this live stream, I'm going to be working on a new video talking about the free record option. I've already been messing with it, and it's quirky. Certainly quirky. And so the reason why I'm doing this video about the release notes are because sometimes when we get like a point upgrade, like a 0.5 from a 0.4, and we're talking about a 10.7.4 to a 10.7.5, you think, that's not a huge upgrade. They did add some decent new features, ones that I'm happy about. I think that everyone seems so far to be happy about, and they've been talking about these particular upgrades for a period of time. But then I wanted to see the release notes, and they weren't coming out yesterday. At least I couldn't get to them. And here they are. And so this is the point I want to make a little bit. We're going to go through some of these, but I want to go down to the 7.4 from 7.3 right here. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like 8 or 9 different things here. That came out from 10.7.3 to 10.7.4. Um, I'm going to casually scroll up through all of the things that were either fixed, added, slightly changed when 10.7.5 came out. And like I said, we're going to go through a little bit of these. I haven't read through every single line of this yet, but you can see I'm still going. Still scrolling, 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 still scrolling. Now, I'm going to say this as clearly as possible for every single one of you Reaper users out there. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to aim at Reaper users. But sometimes it's like go to the Logic Pro group on Facebook, and you're going to see two types of people. Those who complain that there aren't enough new features and they want new things, and those who always stay behind and go on old and say, nothing's really valuable coming down on these updates. And the truth is that this update is somewhere in between those. It brought some really cool new features. The clip gain for me, while it was already a function that was there, it was clunky to have to go over to the properties, but now I'm just going to be able to fly through my files anytime I need to and make those changes. But behind those, so we had what they're listing as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 or so new features. These are what they're calling the new features and enhancements. And some pretty cool stuff. Why they would put 8 to 32 round robins available on auto sampler is the number one new feature. Mind-boggling. That's okay. But all the rest, they're like truly new features, right? And then after we get out of those ones that you're going to hear talked about a lot, we have the stability and reliability. And this is where you get some things like fixes an issue where logic could quit unexpectedly. We're going to get a bunch of those. And some of you are going to look at these and be like, oh, that was something that happened to me one time. And so there's a bunch of those, just like fatal crashes or hangs or just general functionality throughout there. Like for instance, logic no longer quits unexpectedly when the virtual memory setting for sampler is toggled in the logic settings. That hasn't happened to me, but it's probably happened to somebody because they're fixing it, right? So those go on for a while. Then we have the performance. Performance is improved when browsing samples in sampler. That is something I've noticed. It does go a little slow sometimes. Then we have fixes an issue where dragging region-based automation nodes could generate unnecessary MIDI events. I haven't seen that one myself, but cool. The cursor no longer seems to freeze briefly when scrubbing plug-in controls. I have noticed this one. It's what makes my Mac Studio Ultra feel like my Mac Mini. You know what I mean? It's like that one moment where you do something and it just like pauses and you're like, what the crap? I have one of the nicer computers out right now. Why is that sluggish? And so they're fixing these things to help that feel smoother. Not just a few of these. Like we're talking a number of these just in this one category of performance. And then we get into accessibility. For any of you who use or need Logic, but you have you have to use accessibility features in order to use it to its full potential. And I've heard this. I have a student at the university who is blind and can't just use Logic like perhaps the average person would. And we had a long conversation about a year ago about how poorly implemented some of the accessibility things are in Logic. Well, now we have a number of things that have been added. This doesn't mean much to maybe everyone who's watching or listening to this video, but this means a lot to some of the users, and I think it's really important not to overlook that. Honestly, I would love to see exactly which of these things are being enhanced in Reaper every single time that they do an update. I'm not saying they don't, I'm just curious. I'd love to know how that compares. If any of you know, let me know. Then we have spatial audio and surround, a number of things here that have been enhanced that will now act like they're supposed to. A number of enhancements for smart tempo. That was one of the bigger things that we're looking at in this update with the new free record mode. And my next video is going to be all about this. Live loops had a number of things that were fixed. I'm going to say fixed, but every once in a while they're just changes or enhancements, things that weren't designed one way but now are. So it's like they're not really calling it a new feature, but sometimes it is. So for instance, MIDI transformer is now available for selected live loop cells. Sounds like that wasn't a thing before, now it is, but they're not calling it among the new features. Audio files imported to live loops cell are now properly rounded to the nearest beat. It's like some of these things you got to wonder if that was really the case before. How are people using some of these features? Or is it just sometimes for some people on some systems? I don't know. That's a question that always bothers me. Flex time and flex pitch have a number of new things. So, for instance, flex edits are now preserved when recording over a span that encompasses more than one existing flex region in create take folder mode. I didn't know that was an issue, but I'm really glad they fixed it because I'm sure somebody has done this and it has gotten screwed because of it. Flex audio regions and cycle or live loops. Playback now remain in sync with the click. They weren't before, apparently. Okay, cool. Some people say, well, flex time and flex pitch are amazing. And then you look at what they're doing in terms of fixes of bugs, and you think, how are people using this? Right? And more. It keeps on going with these ones. Instances where things could go out of sync, not maintain edits. Let's see. Audio region waveform overviews now consistently update to show changes when they're split. I mean, it's just like a lot of stuff there. ARA support. Cloned regions from original regions that now include Melodyne ARA edits now include those edits. There's just 3 things with ARA support. All of them look like they're aimed at helping Melodyne work better in Logic. I've seen that a number of times on message boards and things where people want better performance there. And it looks like we're slowly getting it. Sampler and quick sampler. Some things happening here. Looks like all pretty normal. Just basic fixes. A couple articulation fixes. Some automation fixes. Always good. Let's see. Fixed an issue where applying relative automation that increases the pan value to a setting greater than plus 63 could cause the pan setting to roll over to minus 64. I actually think I've seen that before. cool. There were a couple in here. Let's see. Logic now instantly writes all automation necessary changes when loading new AU presets. Okay, I didn't. So a bunch of automation things that are being fixed. Mixer. When a new VCA is initially assigned to an aux channel that is not assigned to a track, it is now possible to create new VCAs as expected. Apparently you weren't before. Thank you. Some other issues in terms of that. A lot of fixes here. Groups, a couple group fixes, some alchemy fixes, some drummer and drum machine designer fixes, and then a bunch of like just generic plugin fixes, things that could cause clicks, things that would just act unexpectedly, things where MIDI doesn't go to the right place. And this list just goes on for the plugins. This one I thought was up above. It looks like they may have left it down here when they moved it. Partially because you can see there's a comma at the end, and so it looks like it got moved. Sweet. The freeze button in Chromaverb is now dimmed in algorithms that don't offer the freeze function. That's very nice of you. But this one here, that's just the MIDI data from AU v3 plugins as regions. Wait, that's different. That's different than the one above, right? Is anybody else seeing this and not thinking I'm crazy? It's saying, or maybe that's just the MIDI plugins. But it says, if there's other plugins, I wonder if that means instruments or just effects. It's very vague, this one sentence. I don't know. I'll have to explore that and see if that is something different than the other new feature they talked about. The input listen setting on the tie-dye, so some very specific plugin fixes. Let's see. Track names for contact patches now display as expected. Some step sequencer fixes, some takes and comping fixes, some track stacks fixes, some key command fixes, some sound library fixes, Apple Loop fixes for the interface, some import fixes, some bounce and export fixes, some logic remote fixes, some control surface and MIDI controller fixes, step input fixes, fade fixes, global track fixes, impulse response utility. They're still updating the impulse response utility. I don't know if any of you realize just how miraculous that is. Resolves an issue where the deconvolution option in the edit menu could activate when the open project has already been deconvolved. And then pressing option while the input menu is open allows all selected channels to be assigned to consecutive input. That's actually super useful if you've ever used the IRU. That's actually pretty cool. The audio device support. Whoa. This may be the most important update of this entire version of Logic. Now, bear with me for any of you who are listening. The dialog asking whether or not to use a newly connected audio device now remembers the user's choice per device. Whose heads just exploded? I mean, seriously, how much of a pain is that ever going to be? That means I don't have to always tell it not to connect to something. It will remember that choice over and over and over. For all of you watching, if you like that one, do hit the like button, because you should all be hitting the like button for that one. What the crap? That should have been like listed at the top of all of their stuff. Moment of silence for all of the hours of my life wasted before they added this feature. Okay, some undo fixes, some one Verispeed fix, some score fixes. Amazing they're still working on that one. Editing fixes, overall some general, just random general things. Let's see. I'm sure there's some other gems I'm missing because I'm going a little bit faster. I haven't gone through these ones at the bottom as much. But let's see. When the select all command no longer omits frozen tracks. Okay, cool. I think those all look pretty straightforward fixes. Cool, cool, cool. Look how many of things are in this list. Let's see, MIDI events set to external instrument are no longer 2 milliseconds late when MIDI 2.0 is enabled. Oh, a bunch of MIDI 2.0 users probably are like scratching their heads. I'm excited to see where MIDI 2.0 goes in Logic. Right now it's not doing much. Um, doo-doo-doo. It is now possible to remove the output track from the main window by deleting it. Okay. I think I have noticed that one before. And that's it. I mean, holy crap. There's a part of me that was like, what have they been doing for 6 months? What is the one software engineer still working on Logic doing for the past 6 months since the last update? And now you know an actual significant amount of things to make Logic experience better, to make it so that it works better without necessarily having to throw everything new at it. Am I happy that we got this update instead of Logic 11 with a bunch of really cool new features? Well, if anything goes to show, it's probably going to be that the next version of Logic is going to look a lot like the current version with just some new acquisitions. Like, they're not going to be changing stuff on the inside as much. They're not going to be adding so many things that make this a magical app. They're going to add probably more plugins, more beat tools, more creative tools for those who are producing popular styles of music. And if you're hoping for anything other than that, there's nothing on this track record which would justify that and suggest that that might be what's happening next. That being said, I know a lot of people who make a lot of great music on Logic and they use older versions of it. And so I don't think that there's anything preventing you from expressing your creativity in the musical realm. So take that for what it is. You've all been pretty quiet, all of you watching this. Any questions or anything you want to perhaps discuss before we pull the plug on this live stream? Put it in the comments. Looking over there right now. We'll see if anything comes up. Blast it on. Greetings. Thanks for being your first time. Make sure you subscribe. We've really switched over to focusing more on live streams. I usually give about 6 minutes warning before I do one. At some point in my life, I'll have my crap together enough and do a weekly or twice a week live stream at the exact same time. Until then, it's when I find something cool that I want to talk about and I just make a thumbnail and I post it up and say I'm going live in 5 minutes. So that's how it works for me, at least. I'm assuming everyone's a little bit different. Or I know people have made comments this week saying, I wish I knew when these were going to be. And I say to them, I wish I knew when they were going to be too. So far, I haven't noticed any issues. It's been really smooth for me personally, going to Ventura and then going to 10.7.5. That's not the case with everybody. Some people haven't been able to open it since they did that. Hopefully with this 10.7.5, they're able to. Hopefully there's no mention of moving up to the new operating system. However, you have to assume that if there was anything that they needed to do to make it work on there, that would be included, just not listed in the release notes. General compatibility with your own company software isn't something that they typically list. No enhancements for specific computer types. That says a lot about the M2 architecture being pretty much the same as the M1 architecture, I guess. Okay, well, that's it for today. I'll be changing. Oh, wait, here's something. Plastodon says, I'm waiting to upgrade to Ventura for quite a while, but 10.7.5 has been good so far. If I was on one of my older computers, I don't think I would go to Ventura right away either. But my computer is relatively new, and so I think that it's probably been tested more by Apple than, say, one of the older models of a computer. Sure, I'd like to think that they're testing everything equally, but you know, they're probably going to be testing on some of the Mac Studio Ultras and things. And so my guess, and it seems to hold up so far, that I'm having less issues. Third-party things don't all work. The majority of my third-party stuff does work. All of the third-party things I need to work still work great. So for me, that's just the sitch. Okay, that's it for today's stream. I'm going to get on making this other video about the freeform recording tool so you can see how to use it. I'm curious about how it really works, and so we're going to be doing some tests and running some stuff. But thanks for watching. That's it. See you later.